Okay. So I'm glad to have you with me here. And I have to say, my first question to you is going to be just probably something you get asked a lot, but it's your name. I mean, how did you get the stage name Zuby?
Sure. So Zuby is simply the shortened version of my full name. My full first name is Unzubechukwu, which means God's decision in the Igbo language from Nigeria.
Wow.
So Zuby is just a short version of Unzube. And so it's just like Will being short for William. So
Okay.
easy.
It is easy.
And I've been called that since my family calls me that. It's not just like a stage name or something. It's I've been called that since I was a little kid. So
So,
some people call me by my full name, but usually everyone calls me Zuby.
so it's just another one of those things that Wikipedia got wrong because it says it's your nickname. Sorry, it's your stage name. It's really your nickname. One of
Yeah.
many things. Don't worry, I'm not relying on Wikipedia for
Oh,
everything.
that's okay. Honestly, I haven't checked my Wikipedia article for a while. I'm sure it's got multiple inaccuracies.
I am terrified of ever getting one, so I'm trying to actively avoid ever having a Wikipedia page. It
Well,
is
it's a good sign. It's a good sign. I actually explicitly wanted one for the first several years of my career, but apparently I wasn't notable enough at the time to have my own Wikipedia page. But lo and behold, a few years ago, one's been being created. One was created. I don't know who created my Wikipedia page. I don't know who maintains it and who updates it. But yeah, I guess I'm quote unquote notable enough now. So I guess that's a sign of making progress in the world.
yeah, well, and yours is not bad actually, but some of the ones I've seen, however, I think a lot of people would prefer not to have them. So, which is why I said I'd rather not have one if I can prevent not having one, I will actively block it from happening just because I just don't trust it. I used to be a huge supporter of Wikipedia. I thought it was, the cat's meow. And I think me and my family, we used to donate to it because they had all these pity emails that they would send out, how desperately in need they are. But now even one of the co-founders of Wikipedia has kind of spoken out against it. But you seem to have avoided the stain of Wikipedia so far. But now that I've said it, I might have jinxed you. So hope
Yeah.
not.
Thanks for that, Kat. I
Let's
appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's erase that whole part of this
Okay. Okay.
conversation. Right? Rewind. How come you don't have that button for life? Sometimes you really, in dreams, I do. It's like I cut off my finger in dreams. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You cut off your finger and it's like, oh, it's okay. It's going to grow back. But
Well, I've never cut off my finger in a dream before. I don't interpret dreams, so I don't know what that says about you, Kat. But I'm glad that life doesn't have a rewind button, actually. I think it would be
really?
pretty messy if it did. Yeah. I mean, if that were the case, I mean, only one person really would be able to have one. If everyone had their own rewind buttons, then it would descend into chaos pretty quickly, right?
That's that. Yeah, that's a really valid point. Actually, you you are correct. Which kind of brings me to the next subject. The reason that you thought of that so quickly. You graduated from Oxford with a first class honors degree, according to Wikipedia, from in computer science. So you have a pretty logical mind. Not that you need a computer science degree to have a logical mind, but that does suggest that you were sort of drawn to, I think, logic and that sort of thing. But you made the leap to rap, and I don't know, did you ever end up practicing computer science? Like, what was the journey like from sort of the leap from computer science to rap?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, it wasn't a huge leap. So I started my music career when I was in university. I started rapping in my first year, or what Americans would call freshman year. And then in my second year of university, I actually released my first album called Commercial Underground. So that was way back in 2006 now. So I was already making music and selling albums and doing live shows when I was still in university. I sold, I think by the time I'd graduated, I'd sold maybe like 1,500, 2,000 albums hand to hand, something like that. And then I graduated from Oxford when I was 20 years old. I took a year out right after graduating and did music full time for a year and put out my second album, which was called The Unknown Celebrity. And then after that year, I moved to London and I worked in the corporate world for 3 years as a management consultant for a very big company. I did that for 3 years while still doing my music stuff on the side. And then in November 2011, I went full time with my music. So by the time I went full time, I'd already been doing music for 5 years and I'd already put out 4 projects. So it wasn't sort of this jump from not doing music at all and doing something completely unrelated and different to diving full on headfirst into music. I already was doing it. I already had a small fan base and, had sold a few thousand albums. So it was definitely taking a big risk still in many different ways. But I've been on this adventure now since 2011 and added a lot of additional strings to the bow over the course of that time. My podcast, 2 books, and going to write a 3rd one this year, public speaking, coaching, all the social media stuff. So it's been a heck of an adventure, but that's how that played out.
So is computer science sort of your fallback, or was it a passion? Like, what
No.
was the deal there?
Like why, as in why did I choose to study it?
Yeah.
Sure. So, like I said, I wasn't making music before I went to university. I started in university. So I didn't go to university thinking like, oh, I want to be a rapper or I want to be music or, do music or anything creative. I was like, I would have been 16, 17 years old. And I was thinking, all right, I'm going to go to university. What should I study? Should I study medicine? Should I study engineering? Should I study mathematics? Should I do biology, chemistry? And I was leaning towards a science, but I wasn't 100% sure which one. In hindsight, full transparency, I probably would have done biology in hindsight if I had that rewind button. I didn't enjoy my degree. I didn't particularly enjoy computer science, but I'm very interested in tech. I am interested in computers. And so I thought, okay, I've got a logical brain. I'm interested in tech and computers and all that stuff and have been since I was a little kid. So let me give computer science a shot. It didn't end up being really what I thought it was going to be. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I'm not a coder. I'm not a natural coder or a programmer. And it was a heck of a grind, but I did it. I'm sure I learned some useful things from it. I definitely learned some useful things from it, even though I don't sort of use them in any practical application day to day. But in terms of problem solving and I guess training your brain to kind of work in a certain way, I'm sure it had some sort of side benefits in terms of the things that I do now. It's a little bit like how, I was a management consultant for a few years, and that's very, very different to being a musician and doing all the other things that I do. But there are still elements from that job, even just professionalism and communication and even knowing how to send emails properly and stuff like that, and how to conduct myself with such a broad range of different types of people. I think that's probably something that is kind of one of my top tier skills, is being able to communicate well and effectively with an extraordinarily broad range of people, regardless of their age or their nationality or whatever it is. I've met in person. I've met over 500,000 people at this stage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've had real world conversations with over 500,000 people. Yeah. I used to sell my CDs on the street. I used to just be out there on the street all day.
Oh, you're one of
people.
those people. Okay.
Yep. One of those. What are one of those?
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that comment. Okay.
No, what are one of those? Tell me.
One of those people approaches me with a CD. That's what I meant. I'm glad.
No one does it no one does it the way I did. No one does it the way I used to.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't compare me to these people in Manhattan or whatever.
Yeah, it was completely in Manhattan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
don't compare me to that, because that was not how I did it.
Some of them were very charming.
Okay, if some of them were good, okay, maybe you can compare me to the charming ones, because some of them are pretty aggressive and manipulative, and that's
some of them were definitely aggressive. I wouldn't have seen you as I can't imagine you as being like aggressive and manipulative, but some of them have been charming. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
so I sold over 30,000 albums doing that. And you can imagine how many people you talk to sell that many albums. And then, of course, if we include social media, I'm sure I've spoken to multiple millions of people at this stage. But the reason I bring that up is because I think the power of so much of what I do actually across all the different mediums, sometimes I confuse people because I do such a broad array of stuff, but actually there's a through line between all of them in terms of it's all communication. You know, that's what it is, whether it's podcasting or it's standing on stage giving a speech or it's doing a live show or writing a song. It's all communication. It's all trying to reach people with a message and being adept and proficient in getting your points across in a succinct way, which is also captivating and interesting. And that's what I'm about.
See, this is like the job interview portion of our conversation. But it's funny because it comes up with me too, because I've sort of done a lot of different things. And sometimes, I've had to sort of figure out, okay, how do I talk about this? And I've come to this realization that, hey, like all these things that I've done, which some of them I won't say, but but all of these things that I've done, they do, I've learned how to kind of put it together. Well, they're all part of what you said, how you said it's all part of communication. Well, I say, well, it's all part of storytelling. And so whether, I've produced video, I've written, I've done advertising or like written advertising copy. But ultimately it all comes down to telling a story in some way or another. And so I feel like that's what it's all about. And so that is, and I think that is kind of the same thing for you. But each skill that you learn from these experiences allows you to communicate better in the next thing that you do. So I think that's something that we can sort of relate to. But something that I don't know if it had a huge impact on your life or not, but I found it interesting is that you were involved in sort of a high profile incident that had a lot of guns pointing at you. I imagine that was, a pretty traumatic experience at the very least. But from what I've sort of gathered from what I've read about it, it was also a big attempt. There was an attempt to politicize it and to maybe make it a more of a race issue, which I believe from what I've looked at, you perhaps didn't quite view it that way at the time. Can you give us a little bit of a context of that and why you responded how you did and maybe what impact it had on you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting thing to be brought up because, I don't even like think about this thing anymore. Like you almost kind of reminded me that it happened. So this is in, I think 2008. It was either 2008 or 2009. It was when I think it was 2008 because it was when I was straight out of university. I remember I was promoting my second album. And I was doing my music full time for that year before I went into the corporate world. So I'd just been out and about in the city of Southampton, south coast of England, selling my CDs one day. And then I was living in a town called Bournemouth at the time, which is like half an hour away, about 30 miles. And I was, normal day. And then I'd finished selling my CDs. I got on a train at about 6 p.m. to just head back, half-hour journey back to Bournemouth. As I come off the train at the station, this is a journey I've done a zillion times, like kind of a standard commute almost. And I come out the train, and as the train is pulling up, I see a lot of armed police at the station. Which you see sometimes, sometimes if you're in an airport or you're in like a train station or sometimes you see police going around, with their rifles and the sniffer dogs and stuff like that. Maybe there's some terrorist threat or there's, whatever, right? I didn't think much of it.
Dogs like me. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think much of it. And then I take like 2 steps off the train and I just hear shouting. I hear, put your hands up in the air, da da da. Like I hear all this drama and commotion, and I'm looking around, trying to work out what's going on, right? Who are they shouting at? And then one of a police officer, forcefully pushes me back towards the train, and I look up, and I've just got like 4 or 5 policemen with their guns just all aimed at me, right? Obviously, I have no idea what's going on. Imagine you were just coming off your commute, coming back home. Next thing you know, you're in this situation. So, they're shouting, just shouting commands. I can't remember exactly, put your hands up in the air, get down on your knees, lie down, face down. They kind of approach like closing in with their guns all on me at this point. I'm just following the orders. Next thing they're handcuffing me. Someone tells me I'm under arrest for a Section 1 firearm offense. I don't know what this means. I know I don't have a firearm, let alone have committed any offense with a firearm. I have no idea what's going on. So my brain is just like, it was very surreal. It felt like a dream. It felt like, oh, okay, I'm going to wake up from this situation. Like, obviously this isn't real. And so next thing I know, I'm handcuffed and they're sort of marching me into this room because they wanted to ask me some questions and do a search. This is all still at the train station. So obviously everyone else is kind of seeing that. People are like, busy train station. Everyone's like, what on earth is going on? Like, who's this guy? What's happening? Like, none of it makes sense. And keep in mind that in the UK, the police don't typically carry guns. So for firearm police to be involved, it has to be like something that's a very heightened level of threat because
Right.
it's not like the States where all the cops have guns. Most of the cops don't. Like the firearms unit is a special unit. So they'd actually sent 2 firearm units, I found out later down the line, specifically to arrest me. So I'm in this room and they're just like asking me questions. They're saying that there was a firearm offense. Apparently someone threatened someone with a gun in Basingstoke, which is another city that I haven't been to on this day. They're saying this afternoon, someone in Basingstoke threatened and obviously they think that I'm this person or whatever. And I'm like, I'm in handcuffs. I'm like, I haven't even been to Basingstoke today. Like, I don't even know. I'm just confused. I don't even know. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And they're asking me questions. They're like, do you have anything on you that you shouldn't? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I've just got like a few CDs left in my bag and some flyers promoting my music. They're asking me all these questions. And then, they're kind of going through the processes as I guess they have to, kind of following the protocol. They kind of take me out and, I'm put in the police car with 2 other officers. And then it's about a 10-minute journey to the police station. And in the car, I'm having a conversation with these guys. And, they're asking me questions and, they're asking about my background and this and that. Like I said, I've just graduated from Oxford recently. I'm telling them, yeah, I've been out in Southampton today promoting my music. I'm an independent rapper, I just graduated in computer science from Oxford University. Maybe you've heard of that place. So I'm there and I'm being like super polite and charming and kind of. They're clearly like, oh geez, we've messed up, haven't we? Right? Like they're like, I can see in their face and in their language they know they've got the wrong guy. They know they've got the wrong guy, but they have to kind of just, they've arrested me, so they have to take me to the station or whatever. So I'm in the police station, in a police station in handcuffs, first and only time in my life. I'm kind of waiting around, I think I have to like check in, give my name, whatever. And then 10 minutes later, someone comes out of this room and they're like, we're so sorry. We got the wrong person.
Gosh.
And so, they offered to take me back home. My car was actually parked at the train station. So I was like, actually just take me back to the train station because my car's there and I'll just drive back home. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like, let me do that. And so I get home and, I was staying with my parents at this time, and I can get home, and my mom opens the door, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. So I tell my parents the story, and now my parents are freaking out more than I was, especially my mom. And then they sent some police officers to actually to come to the house just to like kind of check up and explain this whole situation and whatever. So that was weird enough, and then the whole thing actually got a little bit weirder because the following day, this was on the front cover of 2 newspapers in London. But they didn't know who I was, right? So there was just the image of me lying down with like guns aimed at me, and it was this,
Right.
Commuter. It was this whole thing, and so I've got friends who are in London and whatever at this time who are, who have heard about this thing and they're like, oh my gosh, like Zuby's on the front cover of the paper. And then it got even weirder because the following day they kind of connected the dots and found out who I was. And, so the following day I'm on the paper again, but it's like my face, right? I'm on the cover. And we had like all these media vans and stuff like parked outside the house and all these reporters and journalists who like wanted to talk to me and interview me and this and this. It was very, so in some ways the aftermath was like just as weird as the incident itself. So that's what played out. And then, there was a whole investigation. Anyway, it was mistaken identity. Obviously, I hadn't done anything. They thought I was somebody else who'd threatened someone with a firearm in this city that I hadn't even been to. And yeah, it was a very weird and strange situation. But yeah, that was what that was. It was a case of mistaken identity.
Wow. And so was there kind of an attempt to politicize that you found around you? And how did you find yourself responding to that?
Yeah, there certainly was. So there were a lot of mixed stories going around at the time. So if you think back to sort of 2008 period, this is when there was a lot of alarmism around terrorism, right? Mm-hmm. Because there had been quite a lot of terrorist acts, in Europe in particular. So some people had their own different spin on the story. You know how it is. People don't know the facts. People don't know the info. So they sort of see the images or they hear the story and they try to fill in all the gaps themselves and they make their assumptions. So some people are saying, oh, they thought he was a terrorist and that he was, had a bomb in his backpack or something. That's one narrative. Another narrative is that, the police were just racist and they just saw a black guy and, wanted to harass him or whatever. That was another narrative. And so all of this is going on, right? People are just kind of saying their stuff. And it was a really weird situation as well because, at this time, I really, really was like pushing my music so hard, right? So like I was there for this long period of time trying to get media attention, trying to get journalists, trying to get people to like care about what I'm doing and my music. And then suddenly I have this whole national spotlight on me, but it's for something that I don't even really want to talk about. It's like the attention's on me, but the attention is not on what I want the attention to be on. And also you've kind of got people who are trying to steer you in a certain direction, right? Some people want you to play the race card or want you to play the victim or want you to say this or that or whatever. And I was like, you have to remember at this stage as well, this is before the investigations even happened. So I don't even know. Obviously, all I know is it's mistaken identity. Obviously, there was some error that happened somewhere, but I don't know. I know the whole story now because, there was some thorough I've heard all the transcripts. I know all the mistakes that were made or whatever. But at the time, like, I don't know anything. All I know is that this happened to me, and it wasn't cool. But I have no evidence this had anything to do with me being black or racism or terrorism or this or this. All I know is they thought I was some guy who threatened someone with a gun in Basingstoke. Right. I don't know why they thought I was.
You also don't have evidence on the counter, right? So that
everything's just conjecture. Yeah, but I'm very careful, and I've been like this for a long time. I'm careful to not, sort of emotionally just say things and jump to conclusions without anything to back it at all. Right? I'm not going to come out there and go, oh, they did this to me because, I could have easily gone and played the victim and played the race card and called the police racist and, accused them of being institutionally racist. I could have easily done that. I probably could have got some social clout from it as well. Right? Let me be the, angry victim black guy and, call everybody racist. But I was like, I don't know that. Like, I've got no evidence for that. I don't know what happened. Right? I know it wasn't cool. I know they must have messed up somehow because this shouldn't happen to people. But I don't know. I'm like, let me wait and see. I think wait and see is something that, more people need to learn. Let me just wait and see. And let's not have all these people trying to speculate it and try to use it for their own political agendas or their own narratives and whatever. And then later down the line, months after the fact, we found out everything that actually had happened. It was primarily the fault of actually like one police officer and not the people who were arresting me. It wasn't even the mistake wasn't made there because there were 3 different police forces involved in this because I'd been in Southampton during the afternoon. And both Basingstoke and Southampton, so the city I was in and the city the incident happened in, those are in the same county in the UK called Hampshire. Where I live, Bournemouth, is in a different county called Dorset. And then in the UK, you also have the British Transport Police who are the police for like all the transportation system. So Hampshire Police passed on information to British Transport Police, who passed on information to Dorset Police. And long story short, somewhere along this communication line, the description of the person who had actually done this, threatened this person, ended up being my description. And it ended up being the people who were making the arrest thought that I was the person because that was the information they'd been given, right? So they got the wrong information, if you see what I mean. Yeah, so that was actually what happened. So it wasn't even them. If you were to like blame someone, it's not even the people who ended up drawing the guns on me and arresting me, because all they know is I'm someone who's armed and dangerous and has been running around chasing people with a gun, right? It was a very weird situation.
Because I've had a not quite that experience, luckily, but I had an experience that is where I could have drawn sort of maybe I can see how somebody might draw sort of say, let's say, the racial conclusions. I've been sort of detained in the middle of a store, of a very big store, and for shoplifting. And it was actually an illegal detention, as I later learned. And it was a very humiliating experience. The guards kind of stepped in my way, wouldn't let me go, and went through my body, my pockets, my bag in front of everyone. It was very humiliating. I obviously didn't take anything. But that experience was very negative. Now, somebody could have that, I think people tend to think of me, I get mistaken for all sorts of races, right? So somebody who is of a particular race could think that's happening to them because of the race. Someone else could think, but that's not necessarily the fact of the situation, right? You don't know what the reason is. It could be what I found out later is that the shop had gone through the people in the shop had gone through training just recently of how to prevent shoplifting. And so they were overly eager and weren't actually following proper procedure, but were overly eager in and overly zealous in their actions as a result of the training. So that was probably the more likely reason of why this happened. But somebody could internalize it. And I think that kind of thing happens a lot. And that isn't to say that these things don't happen on occasion because of racial issues. But most of the time when these things happen, people don't know. And they don't necessarily go with the facts, because sometimes the facts are just unknown and will always be unknown. So we tend to react emotionally. And so that's something that I think is sort of common in how we react as a society to things like that when they happen. And then when other voices get involved, they tend to try to make statements and things like that, which sounds like was your case.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's understandable, especially in those type of situations. I mean, what I experienced is something that, probably fewer than 0.1% of people are going to experience in their lifetime. Thank God most people make it through their whole life without ever having a gun drawn on them, let alone lots of them. Like it's not a pleasant feeling, right? It's not, especially in such a state of confusion where you have not done anything wrong. You have no idea what is going on. There's a lot of noise. There's people about. There's a lot of commotion. Like it's a scary situation. I'm very blessed in the fact that I'm a very, very calm individual. I'm a very calm person. I'm in like the bottom. I've done personality tests and I'm in the 0th percentile of the neuroticism trait in the population. Like I have a very long temper. I don't get emotionally jacked up. I never yell at people. I never shout. Like I'm just very calm. So I'm blessed I have that type of personality. because even though I had no idea what was going on, my default situation was just I'll be honest, all that was going on in my head besides the confusion was like, just stay alive, just stay alive, just stay alive, right? Like, just don't do anything stupid, right? Don't be that guy who let me go like let me run, let me try to fight the cops, let me try like it doesn't end well. We've seen those videos, we've seen those incidents. It doesn't end well. I was just like, just look, stay alive. I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know what is going on, but you know, whatever it is, I haven't done anything, right? Like, so it was scary, but at the same time, certainly after the first sort of like 1 minute of just the immediate like, whoa, I wasn't scared, right? I wasn't scared after, like, once they'd handcuffed me or whatever, I had nothing to fear. I haven't done anything wrong. I have no weapons. I'm not some drug dealer or so what, like I've got nothing. So I don't know who you guys think I am. I don't know what you think I've done, but I'm not that guy. And if you don't work this out in the next, like, you'll probably work it out within the next hour. But if not, so there wasn't really anything for me to fear beyond that initial, just stay alive, just stay alive. You've got guns on you. Don't do anything stupid.
So rationality saved the day, basically. But
yeah. I just honestly though, I mean, it's actually the truth, because look, if there's, I think the most important message from me having experienced this, and I've said this to multiple people before whenever someone wants to talk to me about this, but if anyone ever finds themselves in this type of situation, you probably won't. But if you ever do, just comply. Just comply, right? If you ever are in some situation, I don't know, a traffic stop or this or that, where you've got some armed police and, they're on you and don't fight them. Don't try to flee. Don't wrestle them. Don't try to take their gut. Just comply. You'll be pissed off. You'll be angry, right? Rightfully so, right? It feels like an injustice. It's embarrassing. As you said, right? You're there. There's other people looking at you, probably maybe thinking you're a criminal or something. It's embarrassing, but just swallow your pride and stay alive and then deal with it later. Like that's the best thing.
Take your revenge later.
Honestly, I mean, just stay alive. We know there's been so many of these situations where there have been, certain police killings that have happened, particularly in the USA, but also in other countries where, look, the thing should have never happened to begin with, right? However, if you try, I've never seen a situation where someone tries to like fight the cops or like run from armed police and it ends well. Like there's nothing good to come from it, right? You're not going to like fight off 5 cops. Like don't do it. Just don't do it. Just comply. As I've said, it sucks. You're going to seethe, but just do it. And, then you can live to tell the story, right? If the truth is, if I'd reacted really stupid to that situation, I'd be dead. That's the truth of it. And it would have been complete injustice. I did nothing wrong. I shouldn't have been there, whatever, right? They shouldn't have been arresting me. They shouldn't have had guns drawn on me. But I'm glad I had sound enough mind to just, respond in the way that I should.
Well, speaking of sound minds, it almost goes counter to having a sound mind, or maybe not, but you are someone who's pretty outspoken, and in a world where that's not always rewarded. Have you always been as outspoken as you are, and sort of what causes you to be as outspoken as you are, given that it's not always rewarded, as I said?
Well, firstly, I'd say in my case, it's largely been rewarded,
Yes,
unexpectedly.
but it could have not been.
It could have not been. Yeah. Have I always been that way? The honest answer is no, not publicly. I've always been someone who is very intellectually curious. And throughout my childhood and even in my teens, I've always been, just trying to work things out. I've always asked questions and tried to understand why the world is the way it is, why I do the things I do, why other people do what they do and believe what they do. And, culture, politics, religion, social systems, laws, all of this stuff, right? The whole human experience is infinitely fascinating to me. So for a long time, and the fact that I'm even an observer of the world in that way, that's something that I've always done through my music, right? So even when I started making music as a teen when I was in university, I mean, it's really what I was doing. I mean, social and cultural observation. So I guess in some ways I was outspoken because I was a rapper, and rappers are certainly outspoken in
True.
our music. But I wasn't using, say, for example, like my social media channels to start some of the conversations and ask some of the questions that people maybe know me for now, especially since 2019. What really caused that, to be honest with you, was honestly, it was the world becoming more goofy. It was the beginning of clown world. It was the fact that I'm living in a country and in a society, and I'm looking at other countries and societies, especially Anglo countries in the West, UK, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I'm seeing, from the mid 2010s in particular, I started seeing, the beginnings of the mainstreaming of a lot of, what people would now call wokeness or cultural Marxism or, critical race theory, critical gender theory, all these things I saw them kind of early, right? I saw the mainstreaming of this happening really accelerating around 2015. And I was listening to podcasters talking about it. I was, listening to, I discovered Jordan Peterson in 2016. I was listening to Joe Rogan, the Rubin Report, and, Ben Shapiro. I was listening to all these different people, and I was having in private a lot of these conversations, with my parents, with my family, with my friends. We'd talk about all these different issues and, just kind of where the world is going. And then in 2018, it got to a point where I kind of felt this compulsion that I have to. What it is I wasn't seeing a lot of people. I was only seeing a very small number of people saying what I was thinking in a way that I wanted to say it, right? There weren't a lot of people who were, especially if you think back to, I think things have changed even just in the last few years, but especially at that time, not a lot of people were really kind of speaking up on many of these different issues from any sort of point of true sanity. There were only a small handful. And it's weird because I would say that over the past, let's say, 15 plus years, I haven't really changed that much. I've become more politically libertarian, but apart from that, I'm not some sort of radical. I'm kind of fairly, center right positioned on most things and always have been. A lot of my stuff, even a lot of my posts that go viral, I look at them and I'm like, why do I even have to say this, right? This was common sense 10 years ago. This was common sense 15 years ago. But I think that if you sort of have stayed still over the past 10 to 15 years and just seen the world shift around you, then you see that you're now in a position where you might be deemed controversial. And for me in particular, it's funny because as a musician, I'm like the least controversial rapper in the world. If the world were sane, I would be one of the least controversial people in it, right? One of the criticisms I used to always get and still get sometimes for my music is that it's almost like it's too milquetoast, right? Like I'm not there. I don't cuss. I don't use profanity. I'm not rapping about gang banging and drugs and women and this and that, like so many of these artists and musicians do.
That's controversial in its own.
Just look at the Grammys yesterday, right? So that's the kind of stuff that is being pushed and being mainstreamed. And somehow if I just come out there and I say, hey, a woman can't have a penis, or there's only two genders, stuff which is like so stupid that like so obviously, no one even said this stuff a decade ago because you didn't need to say it, right? Because no one was saying an alternative, right? No one disagreed. It didn't even matter. Like even if people were very liberal, like there weren't a lot of people in 2009 challenging these sort of statements.
Your views in 2009 would have been considered liberal, essentially. Just mainstream liberal,
sane, just normal. Okay. It's not even but the thing is, this is why it's amazing, because these type of conversations get politicized. But that's
Yeah.
not even a political point. Saying that a woman doesn't have a penis, how is that political? That's not a political, this is a biological statement, right? If I say that 1 + 1 = 2, that's not a conservative position, right? It doesn't matter if you're conservative, a liberal, a progressive, or whatever. Everyone's like, yeah, 1 + 1 = 2, right? And everyone used to agree that there are, you know, go ahead.
Well, now it's scary. No, because now it's almost scary. Like I feel myself kind of hesitating to agree with you because I could feel the fear, even though I do agree with you. But I
Okay.
have this fear of like creeping over me. I'm like, how do I handle this in the right way that and I hate that that's what my thought was. But that, if I'm honest, that was my thought.
Can I
And
ask what that fear is?
that
What do you
fear
think it is?
is, hmm, well, it's a tribal fear, really. It's that fear of somebody saying, I think there's a sense like I think people want to be good people, right? And I think if you say the wrong thing, that makes you not a good person. And your tribe then dismisses you, and then you're alone. And I think when you're in particular when you're someone like me who's not really, I mean, I'm not really in any group, right? I haven't embraced, I'm not in sort of, I also hate making it political, but I'm not
Sure.
on the right. And I'm not really on this kind of woke left, right? And I even hate using the word woke.
Yep.
And, and so there is no group really. So you're kind of alone. And then, and so there is that worry that you're going to be so outcast, so alone at sea, so lonely, and there is no safety net. And for me, I know that for you, there has been sort of a, you've spoken openly, and there has been a reward, but a lot of people speak openly and they lose everything, right? And you don't know what the outcome is going to be when you do it. And I know that for me, I don't know what that outcome is going to be. I just know that I can't continue doing it any other way. So that's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. So far, a lot of the practical aspects of it have resulted in loss. I've definitely lost friendships. I've definitely had some career hits for sure. I was kind of on an upward trajectory, and it certainly has hurt a lot in that way. Uh, but I also feel happier in a sense too, because I'm expressing the truth of what I believe. I've met some interesting people, made some great connections. I do believe in speaking the truth. So I prefer to go this way, but whether I will sink or swim, I do not know. And a lot of people don't have that choice anyways. It's kind of made for them, right? A lot of people, when you look at when they made this choice, they've been maybe canceled. And it seems to me that you sort of just made that choice. I don't think you've had sort of a cancellation aspect in your life that has
Oh, they've
led to
tried.
this.
Come on. They've tried.
They've tried, but that's after the fact. That is different, right? A lot of people have arrived at this, including myself in a way, right? Like I have had sort of the mob come after me, and it did lead to me using my voice in a different way. Now I could have recovered from that, and I've chosen not to. And the reason I chosen not to is because I was just getting so many messages from people who have expressed how suppressed they felt, what fears they had. And so I think there was an aspect of like, okay, you know what? I think I can take one for the team,
Yep.
and this is enough. Enough is enough.
What's the timeline of this? When are you talking about?
Two and a
Is
half
this like,
years ago, maybe.
okay.
Yeah, something like
Okay.
that.
What was that
During the
on? Is
pandemic.
that okay? Was that because of taking a not going with the whole C-19 narrative or something else?
No, it was my whole journalist community.
Okay.
So yeah, it was
Okay.
not going with. It's funny because it was just such a basic thing. Now it just seems so silly now, but at the time it just felt so enormous. So I mean, in my case, I ran a group for women that offered journalist jobs, and actually women and gender nonconforming. So this is how PC it was. And it was an offshoot of another group, and it had about 30,000 members. And somebody posted a job opening at Fox News, and the person got attacked, for just posting the job.
Mm.
And so I made a post, very kumbaya post, saying, "Hey, let's not
Yeah.
have personal attacks, stay away from politics, come together instead of apart." And people just
Yeah.
went crazy, and I didn't
Can I
anticipate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me level with you on this one and be real. Is you're better off without those people. Honestly,
Yeah.
like though I don't believe you've lost a friend, any friends. I think you found out who your friends are, right? People who will abandon you, people who will throw you under the bus because of a disagreement or because you're not being as authoritarian and intolerant as they want you to be, or because you're not telling the lies or going along with the lies that they want you to. Honestly, you don't need those people. And that's the truth of it, right? When people tell me that they've like lost friends over politics, and I'm like, you haven't lost friends. Like you might have thought. I'll tell you something real. Like I'm an outspoken dude. I have lost zero friends ever from all the stuff I say, all the stuff. I've lost zero friends. And I'm not in some echo chamber. I'm not in some world where every single person I associate with has the exact same, far from it. But we all respect each other. We all love each other. The love and the respect and the understanding overcomes whatever political or religious or sociocultural or whatever disagreements that we may have. And so, I don't think people who you have to like be walking around eggshells all the time and you can't even be honest or, tell the truth. Like I'm kind of like, it sucks, but I know a lot of people have kind of gone through this grind mill, and I'm kind of like, honestly, like you're better off. And as you said, I bet you feel more liberated now because you're like, hey, actually, I can say what I think and I can be real and I can be truthful. And I'm not now worried that I'm going to, you don't want, if you're in these situations where you can't say anything, you can't, no matter what you do, you're going to get attacked. Like it sucks. It's no way to live. And it's such an affront to the way that our societies are supposed to be. The whole thing about, so-called free, modern, liberal Western countries is you're supposed to have freedom of speech. You're supposed to embrace diverse viewpoints. You're supposed to be tolerant of one another. You're supposed to be inclusive. All these words that they like to use,
Yeah.
right? It's like I'm just like embody it, right? People talk and like these words: diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, actually live it. Actually live it.
No, I completely agree with that. It's just that it still hurts to be sort of disappointed, I think, in
It
people
does,
that
yeah.
you thought that you liked.
I'm 0%
right?
neuroticism, so maybe it's easier for me
You're
to
not
say this
as,
stuff. But
yeah, maybe. I'm
I'm not
pretty
so
high,
sensitive, but
I
I
think,
do get it.
on
I do get it. Yeah.
neuroticism scale, so it's a little different. But I do. But as somebody said to me, it's kind of think of it as upgrading, and my best friends, like my closest friends, that has never been an issue,
Good.
So yeah, so that they've supported and have been close. It's just is the people sort of in between that I thought I liked,
And you'll also, I'm sure you're expanding your circle as well. You'll
Yeah.
find that's the thing that when you do speak up is, I mean, the amount of people like I'm connected to and the quality of people I'm connected to, like in the past few years since I've been kind of using my voice more, is phenomenal. It's international. And there's so many great people out there. There's so many free thinkers out there. There's so many people who are genuinely willing to listen to different people and agree to disagree when needed, and to treat people, genuinely with kindness, and not just see people as their political badge or as their orientation, or again, or as their race, or as their, just see you as an individual.
Yeah.
All the things that it's actually funny because I'm not a lefty and I never have been, and certainly not a wokey, but like if they actually just embodied the things that they always say, then that would be great. It's like I don't even disagree with a lot of the statements that they make. It's just that they are not embodying it, right?
Yeah.
I'm all for cool inclusivity, cool diversity, cool. treating people equally, cool. I'm on board with that. You know, being tolerant, I'm on board with that. Like, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. My family is from Nigeria. I was born in England. I've been to like 40 different countries. I went to an American school for a while. I'm in, you know, I'm surrounded by diversity. I always have been. Like, I tolerate different viewpoints. I'm not constantly surrounded by people who must think exactly like me. And that's actually what also makes life interesting. If we were all these drones who look the same and think the same and have the exact same opinions and beliefs and experiences and ideas, then it would be so dull. You know, it would be so dull. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation if we were the same person. It's like, what's the point? We already know exactly what each other are thinking. We already know what each other have been through. So I'm like, cool, like, let's actually embrace that for real and, you know, get off this bandwagon of just attack, 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 just this hardcore tribalism and hyper intolerance of like, oh my gosh, that person is, you know, I see situations where people agree on like 90% of stuff, but like the 10% is like, no, we can't, you know, we're now enemies because of that 10%. And I'm just like, that's so stupid.
Well, I used to not have a lot of conversations, to be honest, with people on the right, you know, just because it wasn't in my orbit. And so I
Yeah.
didn't know what people thought.
We're not
And it
that bad,
wasn't,
right?
yeah, well, and it wasn't because, yeah, well, some of you, you know. No, but it's like if you don't know what people think, you start making things up, right? and and people make up such absurd things. Now, there's extremist thoughts on the left, there's extremist thoughts on the right, there's weird people. There's weird people.
There are.
And but you know, when you talk to reasonable, grounded people, you're going to find way more places of agreement than not. And even if you find places of disagreement, that's fine. That helps you refine some things. And I think that's fabulous. I think it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, there's some things that I probably, you know, might even be called like somewhat progressive. I don't know, like prison reform. But you know what? I've had conversations with people who identify themselves as conservatives, and we'll talk about prison reform. We'll find areas that we're going to completely agree with. And you know what? By talking together, we're probably going to come up with a fantastic solution for some of these things. But people don't talk together anymore. And they assume that they just so wildly disagree that they just refuse to even have these conversations. But actually, if they did, they're going to find something far more useful. And that's just too bad, because it's the disagreements are so valuable, I think, because you want to poke holes in your thoughts, because the holes are like your troubleshooting, essentially, right? That's what you do, you know, even in tech, you know, kind of going back to coding, right? That is an essential part of coding too. Is like you have some troubleshooting. You have people whose whole job is to actually find bugs in your code, right? You have to treat policies the same way. You have to treat ideas the same way. And people just don't do that because they feel like their ideas are under attack, because suddenly their identity is under attack if you challenge it even a little bit. But that's not what's happening. You know, I think there isn't that healthy detachment that I think that's, you know, you were saying you're so low on neuroticism, right? And I think maybe we share a little bit of that when it comes to ideas. And so it's like, for me, it's pretty easy to change my idea or my opinion on something because I'm not so attached to it in terms of identity. It's like, it's whatever the best idea is. I don't even like, I might not even like the person whose idea it is, but I can still be fair to the idea itself. Yes. And we've really moved so far away from it. I don't know, maybe we're never there, but I think we're certainly in a more healthy way than I think it appears to me now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a challenge for people. It's a challenge for all of us to disassociate our ideas with our identity. But I think it's something that you sometimes have to do, especially if you're engaging in a conversation or a debate. You have to be able to disassociate your ideas from your identity. And same the other way around, right? If you just see a person as this really low resolution stack of a handful of their beliefs or ideas, which oftentimes you're straw manning to begin with and making a whole bunch of assumptions about what they actually believe, and more so even why they believe it, then you can't really have conversations, and you just get a lot of division and polarization and ultimately hatred and resentment, right? You get to a situation where people actually hate each other. If someone hates another person based on this caricature that they've created in their head of what the person even believes, which oftentimes is not even accurate. I'll tell you what, I've met so many people. I have met very few people whose overall socio-political orientation or even religious orientation or lack thereof is based around hatred, right? Or someone who just wants the world to be a worse place. I don't meet a lot of people who I'm like, you know what? I want America to be worse. I want the country to be worse. I'm trying to make things worse. I want to advocate for policies and ideas that are going to make things worse, right? Now, sometimes people do advocate for things that make things worse, but that's not why, right? but that's not the reason. That's not the reason, right? So there could be some flaw in their thinking or in their analysis or in their prescription, which actually is not a good idea. But there aren't a lot of people who wake up every day and are like, all right, how can I make the world a worse place? And I think that if you have that sort of level of, I don't even know what to call it, charity or compassion to recognize that, okay, number one, people are not simply just their ideas and certainly not just their worst ideas. And also that people are generally not driven by hatred. It's actually, I think a lot of this comes from intellectual laziness. I think that it's very intellectually lazy to just assume that everyone who disagrees with you is either ignorant or full of hate or uneducated or, a bigot, right? That's like the most low resolution way to think about various things, right? So let's take something that's not even that controversial, right? Taxation, what should the income tax level be, right? The people who advocate for lower taxes, it's not because they hate poor people and they want poor people to die and they want, right? No, that's not, I've never met anybody whose idea is that they want more suffering and they want more. Just let the poor people die. Right? That's not a real position, right? That's not a real position. Similarly, on the flip side, sure, there are some people who have some animosity towards rich people or whatever, but generally there aren't that many. There aren't that many like full hardcore communists out there who really just want to jack everybody, and these are not common positions, right? There aren't. Take another one. I don't know. In the USA in particular, there's the whole debate around gun control, right?
Right.
And they make it seem that people who are pro Second Amendment and who want to maintain the right to bear arms, that they want kids to die or they don't care about children. It's this lazy. It's very lazy straw manning of just like, okay, anyone who has an alternate position, it's because they want people to die, or you saw it all through the COVID situation, right? Oh, you want people to die? You want I'm just like, stop. That is not anyone's position, right? If people want to be adults and have a conversation and come to the table like grown-ups and explain why they.
But they're choosing these intellectually lazy positions for some reason.
Yes.
Like they're capable of more, I think.
Yes, agreed.
I think they are. So why are they choosing this? It's like, it's the same thing that they're choosing, Yeah, well, no, tell me.
Yeah.
What is it?
Because it's easy. I think as human beings, I said because it's easy. Yeah, I think as human beings, like there's always mentally, physically, emotionally, there's always the temptation to take the path of least resistance, right? Like the world is a messy place. It's very, very complicated. You can only focus on a few things at one time. You can't give everything your attention. It's much easier to just put things in categories. This is why people love labels, right? Because instead of getting to know every single individual and person who you encounter, it's much easier to just have a low resolution view. Okay, this is my view about this race of people, or this gender of people, or this ethnicity, or this is what I think about liberals. This is what I think about conservatives. This is what I think about Christians. This is what I think about atheists. This is what I think about Muslims. And you can just slap a label on a group of hundreds of millions or billions of people, and you now don't need to do any thinking. It's right. It's like a heuristic. It's just a shortcut, and you can then navigate the world quickly and easily. Just like, okay, I know, oh, that guy's a conservative. Okay, well, I know what I already think about conservatives. So boom, I just apply all my biases and prejudices and assumptions to that person. I don't need to have a conversation with them. I don't need to listen to them. I don't need to get to know them. I already know what they think. So I think that's why people do it. Just like when it comes to the world, the physical realm, why do people choose to eat bad food? Right? People know what's healthy for them and what's bad, but
Yeah.
it's lazy. It's like, well, it's faster, it's easier, it's tasty. Let me just take the easy. Let me take the easy route. But I think if you really want to develop yourself as a human being in any realm, you have to often willingly take the more difficult route. You have to,
I feel
right?
like we were getting away to some extent from sort of having labels and having so many labels. And now we have like infinite numbers of labels and neopronouns and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yes.
are we just getting lazier? And is there an antidote to that? I mean, I'm thinking like, I'm told that the Socratic method, it's somewhat being taught in some schools, but like, how do we deal with this? How do we make people, I don't know, can we make people less lazy?
Well, the reason why I think it's difficult to solve is that I think the solution is really it's at the individual level, right? So, for example, I've helped a lot of people to get in better shape. I've helped people to lose 100+ pounds. I've helped people to get in the gym. I know how to work with someone one on one. I know how to help someone one on one, or even, through Twitter and YouTube and my book and all these other mediums. I can help people at scale to some level, but I don't know how you say you wanted to cure the obesity epidemic in the USA, right? That is like that's hard. It's not even because the solution is difficult. Like it's not a complicated thing actually to resolve on an individual level, but how do you scale it? Right? You can
Yeah.
teach a single person how to, like right now we're having a one-on-one conversation. But if there were 1,000 people in the room, if there were even 10, if there were 1,000 people all chiming in and interrupting and shouting over us, and like it's now a really, really hard conversation. So it's easy for us to talk one-on-one. This is part of the problem with social media, is it's a problem of scaling. I can have this conversation with you one-on-one. I can't say anything on Twitter. I can't say anything that's remotely, like I can say the least controversial thing, right? And still some percentage of people, because it's just a problem of scale. Someone gets triggered or someone gets angry or this person misunderstands it or this person thinks I meant this when I really meant that. And now they're fighting and they're commenting. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like it doesn't scale. And that's one of the limitations and problems we now have because we never had communication. We never had the technology to communicate at scale like this. That's why
Yeah.
social media is so messy.
I realize just to what extent. I mean, you've grown so much. So, I've grown a little bit, and I've seen the difference as well. But like, the level of misinterpretation is so significant. Like, people have been asking me, how does it feel to be so misinterpreted, constantly
Oh my
misquoted?
gosh.
And I'm thinking, like, is it me? Because I was thinking, like, is this me? Like, am I just so unclear with my words? But it tends to go back to this sort of these ungenerous interpretations of each other that we have, and it does go to this labeling because I think for me, people read my bio and I've wondered, okay, should I take out my publications? But at the same time, that's what I've done with my life. I have written for these publications. Why should I change that? And I tell people, don't judge a book by my bio. But they read, if they're conservative and they read my sort of left-leaning assortment of publications, they definitely make all these judgments. But then there's a group of people who are able to sort of see beyond that, and they say, okay, well, I actually disagree with a lot of what you say. I agree with some of you say, but I can see that you are making arguments in good faith. You're willing to listen. You're sort of balanced and logical. and they're able to look beyond sort of the ideology. So
Hmm.
they're able to do that, which is, I think, is an excellent reflection on them more than on me. But so it's like, how are they able to do that? How do you bottle that up, make other people
I'll tell
drink
you,
that?
that's such an interesting point. I'll tell you what I think one of the problems here actually is that I think that what you just described, in terms of your own intellectual honesty and effort to act in good faith, is, to be honest with you, I say this as someone who's been on Twitter for 14 years, that's the exception, not the rule. That's part of the problem. So most people, I don't know the numbers, but I would say that most people on Twitter are not doing their best to be intellectually honest and not hyper partisan and try to be
So there's a
objective and
knee-jerk
reason.
reaction.
Yeah. So most of the time, like if you've come across thousands and thousands and thousands of profiles, I mean, as I said, people adopt heuristics, and sometimes heuristics are lazy, and sometimes they're simply pattern recognition, right? So I'll give you an example of one that is one of my own heuristics. In fact, there's an Urban Dictionary term named after me, right? Which is when I see someone has she, her, he, him, they, them in their profile, I roll my eyes and I assume that they're not going to be the most objective and good faith person, because out of my hundreds, thousands of experiences with people who decide to put their pronouns in their bio, I've maybe had I don't know, out of 1,000 interactions, maybe I've had like 7 that were somewhat positive, right? 99% of the time, I'm not dealing with someone who is reasonable. And so people jump to these, so, so people jump
So
to
I
certain
get it.
conclusions.
So I
Yeah.
get it, but I've been trying. So I've made a turn lately. So I've been trying to get people to actually engage with people who have pronouns in their bios,
It's
and
exhausting,
trying
man.
to
I've
ask
tried it.
them
I've
about
tried it.
them. I know, but I've also it has led to occasionally really great exchanges. I've even spoken to Antifa members. That did not go anywhere great, but they weren't rude to me.
Okay.
They did advocate for violence, however.
Uh,
Um,
uh, they weren't rude.
yeah,
They just wanted to. They weren't rude. They just wanted to
they
beat
didn't
me
want
up.
to kill me, but they did say that in general, fascists, which they defined very loosely, certainly deserve to die. I
Okay.
did all the people with neo pronouns and trans. Yeah, I did. I tried to engage. I don't think everything went somewhere, but I think I do like to model good behavior
Yeah.
and conversations. In, but I don't think it scales, like you said. I think
It
it
doesn't.
can affect in very individual cases, and I have seen it make a difference. I have, but it takes a lot of my time.
There you
And
go.
so I wonder, like, okay, so what's the point of that? Like, is it worth it if I'm reaching one individual? And maybe it does, maybe it matters enough, but at the same time, it really doesn't scale, and it is a lot of time. And with the pronoun people, but at the same time, like if we just attack each other all the time, I don't see it going anywhere useful either. So
You're
if
right.
you just assume somebody with, they're just going to encounter extra hate, it's going to firm them up in their positions, and it's going to further the division. So yeah, even if they have these like insane ideas, which some of them do, some of them actually, weirdly enough, can be quite reasonable and are going along for various reasons. Sometimes I called somebody out on it just as a joke because we were at a conference that didn't seem like it would have people with pronouns there. So I just made a joke, and she's like, I know. And she was kind of embarrassed about it. And she said, I'm in a faculty where if I didn't have that, I would have a lot of trouble raining down on me. So you just don't know what people's circumstances are. So I try to treat people a certain way. And unfortunately, like I've seen people get really hurt by some of these, what we call wokeism, and attacked. And I think I think some of this is traumatic. I've realized that some of what happened to me was also traumatic. It took me a long time to kind of recognize that. And I think it causes sometimes this reaction in people that causes them to go to sort of an extremely angry place.
Hmm.
And they, in their opposition to it, they become hostile and angry, and they turn into sort of the oppositional force of what they're fighting, but they become just as bad. And I
Hmm.
don't want that to happen, right?
Yep,
So,
absolutely. I've said before that I think it's much better to define yourself by what you're for rather than what you're against,
yes.
which is why, I don't call myself like, and I don't like it when people like even refer to me as like anti woke, for example,
Mhm.
right? Because like I don't define myself as being like anti woke. Like I'm pro personal responsibility, I'm pro individualism, I'm pro entrepreneurship, I'm pro victor mentality, I'm pro not seeing yourself as a victim. I'm in favor of a lot of things, and I generally try to promote the things that I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of physical fitness and mental fitness and making yourself stronger instead of trying to nerf the world. All of these
Love
things. So
that.
instead of just like attacking and defining myself by, there's a lot of bad ideas out there in my mind, right? There's a lot of things that I see in the world that I don't like, right? And sometimes it's important to challenge it or to call it out depending on what it is. But I think it's much more effective and also much more positive and much more inspiring to show people the alternatives, right? To show people the other way, to show how, as you said, to model how you can have some of these conversations and debates and so on. I mean, despite the amount of social media nonsense and number of people I'm connected to, I actually have a few. I have a few sort of like rules of engagement for social media, which I don't sort of publicize, but which I go by. And one of them is I do not attack individuals. I don't attack individuals, right? I can be very critical of ideas, right? If I think there's like a completely nonsensical or, you know, extremely divisive or just awful idea that's floating around out there, then I can be brutal with an idea, but I don't just like go after people. I don't just like attack individuals. I don't insult. I will never be the first person to throw an insult, right? And in fact, even most of the time when people insult me, I normally don't insult back. If they really, really cross a certain line, okay, I'll return fire. But I'm not going to be the person who's just there day in, day out, insulting people, attacking people, calling people. Like I don't do that. And I also try to not be any more, how would I say this? I try not to use any more force than is required, right? There are certain times and situations where I'm like, okay, I gotta go a little hard at this person because they've stepped way, way, way out of line, or this idea, whatever it is. But I try not to go harder than is necessary. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, if I'm wrestling with like my nephew or something, right? I'm not gonna like just pick him up and body slam him at full strength. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I have to offer some resistance, otherwise it's not fun. But I'm not gonna use more force than is necessary to the point that it causes someone's some unnecessary harm. That's not my goal. When I'm on social media, when I'm in the real world, I'm not walking around trying to cause harm to people, to cause trauma to anybody, mentally or physically or emotionally hurt someone. That's not who I am. That's not where my heart is. I mean, ultimately, I believe all human beings are made in the image of God, and that's kind of actually the baseline of how I do my best to try to treat other people, even if I really, really disagree with them or think that they're really, really out of line. I'm like, man, this person's still, this person's still made in God's image. So let me not go as hard as like my animalistic nature might want me to. And so, I think a big part of the problem, Kat, is just that we human beings are not designed to communicate at such scale. I think that's the ultimate problem, right? Is that, I mean, I'm approaching across the social media platforms at this stage. I'm now approaching 2 million followers. And who on earth, who had access to 2 million people in the past? Unless you were like a king or like the
Book
president
author,
or something. And
maybe.
even then you didn't just have a thing in your phone, sorry, a thing in your pocket that you can just pull out and just tap a few buttons, hit a button, and you can send an image, a video, a text message, whatever it is, out to hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of people all over the world in instant time. That technology is remarkable. It's amazing, but it's also completely unnatural. It's completely unnatural. Never before in human history, in any culture, any society, any country, has there been an ability to communicate with people like that, and to see and read all of their ideas and all of their feedback and all their comments on it's so unnatural. So I think that there's a lot of good that can come with it, but I don't think that, some of the problems that we're discussing, there might not really be a solution, because we're not, it can be better, but we're just not meant to be able to speak to so many people. And coming back to one thing you said earlier, the way I think of it, especially on Twitter, but I guess it goes for other platforms as well, is for every follower you have, or for more accurately, every person who reads, say, one of your tweets, that's one translation. So however many people see your tweet, if 10,000 people see your tweet, that's 10,000 different translations. If 100,000 people see your tweet, that's 100,000 different translations. So maybe you know exactly in your head what you meant to say, or what you meant by it, or what was in your heart, what was in your brain when you said it, but everyone is going to interpret it slightly differently. Some people completely miss the mark, right? You say that you like apples and someone's thinks you hate bananas, right? you say your favorite color is blue, and someone's asking you why you despise yellow and why you want to kill people who wear yellow, right? You're like, well, I didn't say that, and that's just how it goes. And I think the deeper the topic you're trying to discuss, or the more polarizing or the more emotionally charged it is, the more misinterpretations you're going to get, because everyone has their biases. Also, some people have really bad reading comprehension. Like, the average American reads at a 7th grade level. Don't forget that. So,
Oh gosh.
right? So a lot of people actually genuinely don't have great reading comprehension, and they'll read or they'll hear something and it doesn't process to actually mean what it said, right? And you see this example all the time. So I could say, I could say that men are taller than women, and someone will come and say, hey, that's not true. Like, my sister's taller than me. And I'm like, you see what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
Their brain is like not interpreting what you said. Like, I did not say that every man on earth is taller than every woman on earth.
And that particular example happens.
It happens all the time, right? So most people will get it, but actually, and then it scales as well. So if you have, say, 1% of people misunderstand you. If you have an audience of 50, not a big problem. If you have an audience of 1,000, okay, 10 people are missing everything I'm saying. You have an audience of 10,000, you get an audience of 100,000, audience of 1,000,000. Now that 1% of people misinterpreting you it's not a majority, but it's still thousands of people. I know for a fact there are thousands of people on the internet who think that I believe and have said many things that I do not believe and have never said. And that's just a reality I've got to deal with. I don't really like it. I wish I could correct each of them and get them to know that I'm not like whatever they think that I am, or whatever, or explain what I meant by certain statements. But the truth is, you can't reach all those people. And if you're going to grow on these platforms, you kind of have to accept, hey, there's going to be people who, hate you, who probably shouldn't, or who think that you believe all this crazy stuff. And it's a shame, it's a shame.
There's something in us that wants to be understood correctly. But at the same time, somebody asked me today, because I've been in a rebellious thing, I've decided I'm going to tweet only in poetry today, until the algorithm on Twitter is fixed. So everything I've been tweeting is a poem. And somebody said to me, asked me, is the things you're tweeting, are poems meant to be understood correctly, by the readers? Is the, author sort of meant to explain them? And I said, not when it's abstract. And so I'm okay with the reader misinterpreting or interpreting in their own way the abstract poetic excerpt. But somehow I'm not okay when it comes to something that's not abstract, that's not a
Yes.
poetic expression. But maybe I need to accept that all my words are perhaps in some way abstract and up to the reader to interpret as they will. And once they leave my mouth or my keyboard, they're out there and that's
Yeah.
it. And I have no control.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, for me personally, as someone who's grown my audience, very, very significantly over the years, is for me that is the hardest. That's actually been the hardest part for me to kind of accept. Because as you said, I want people. I know what's in my heart. I know what I believe. I know that I don't have any sort of, I have no hatred or animosity or whatever towards any individual, let alone group of people or anything like that. Right. But I know for a fact there are people out there who think that I do. There's people who think that, oh, Zuby's some hateful bigot who is he hates, I don't know, I've heard people say that I hate gay people or I hate trans people or I hate liberals or I've heard someone trying to say that I hate atheists or like I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. Me saying that, if I reject the transgender ideology, or I state basic biological facts, or I say that I don't think males should compete with females in professional sports or be in female prisons or whatever, that's not rooted in any type of hatred or animosity or bigotry or what. If someone wants me to like explain these positions, I mean, I think they're mostly self-evident, but if someone wants me to explain it, I'm happy to explain why I say that or why I think this particular issue is important, or the safety concerns or the fairness concerns or what. I'm happy to address all of that, but I know for sure, I don't have I've got this sort of like hatred in me or whatever. And so I don't like the fact that, it's challenging to know that there are thousands of people out there who think that you're something that you're not, or who think that you're hateful when you're not, or who just, even just misunderstanding a position, right? I like my positions to be understood, even just from a kind of like a logical perspective. And I've had to just accept, what, at the scale that things are now, that's just how it's going to be for the future, right? You look at the way, I don't know, if you look at people with audiences much bigger than me, some of whom I admire, whether it's a Joe Rogan or there's people who think Joe Rogan is there's people who think Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson are white supremacists.
That's
like
correct.
What? Like what on earth? Like it's so far off base. Like it's so far from the truth, but there's people who believe that. And I'm just like, okay, like I think that no matter, and I'd say those are two men who articulate themselves pretty well and who, they've got thousands and thousands of hours of videos of them talking and sharing their ideas and going through their thinking and the epistemology of, and having debates and discussions with all these different people. And I'm like, and people still reach that conclusion. And so I think at some point, you have to kind of put your hands up and say, you know what, let me focus on my mission and my message. And let me focus on the people who at least their hearts and minds are either they already like me and my message, or their hearts and minds are open enough to listen to it and potentially like and appreciate some of it. Let me not spend my time on, morons or energy vampires or, people with no charity, people who won't give me any charity. They've made up their mind. They're adamant. They're hyper intolerant. I'm like, you know what? That's not worth my time. That's not worth my energy. Let me focus my energy on the positive and spend my time there. And that's kind of the conclusion that I guess I've ultimately reached. But it is a challenging thing. It is a challenging thing to deal with because even though I tend to lean more on the side of like compared to most people, I care less about being liked than most people do. But I'm still a human being, and I still do like to be liked, right? I certainly don't. Go ahead.
Care less? No, I'm curious. Like, how come you care less about being liked? Is this that's just the way you were born, or?
Part of it is personality type. I'm just not that. I'm not an emotional person, comparatively. But also some of it is some of it is learned. Some of it is a learned skill in order to be able to survive and do the things that I do. right? You
I need
can't.
to figure that one out.
Yeah. So let me give an example. So I used to sell my CDs on the street. I used to sell my CDs on the street. I used to talk to thousands of people every week. Do you know how many people ignore you, how much rejection you get? Like you're just getting ignored, getting rejected. Sometimes people say nasty things to you. Like you have to develop a tough skin. Otherwise you can't do it, right? You give up. You go home and you cry in the fetal position because it's like, people are being mean to me. I want people to like me. I want people to... And so over time you have to develop this mindset of, you know what, it doesn't matter. Screw them. Right? Like, let me focus on the people who do stop and who do listen and who do care and who do come to my shows and who do like that's where it is. And for everyone else, it's like, okay, whatever. If you try to, if I spend all day caring about what every single person who knows or has heard about me thinks about me, then I can't do anything now. I'm so afraid of criticism that I can't speak. Coming back to what we were talking about before, right? I'm so afraid of criticism. I'm so afraid of being rejected or being ostracized or losing this opportunity or that. Like I now can't do anything. I can't make a song because what if someone doesn't like the song? I can't write a tweet because what if someone disagrees? I can't say anything because, well, what if that upsets someone? What if that hurts someone's? So you kind of have to reach this stage where you care deeply on one level, but on another, you really don't, right? I could have 10,000 people raging at me on Twitter or Instagram right now. And I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm just going about my life, doing what I do. I'm not sitting there like, oh my gosh, look at these mean things. Why are they saying this? Why is it? I'm like, whatever. This person's like, I don't care what Mr. Anime Dog says about me. Like, I don't even... It
usually is the Mr. Anime because it's usually the person hiding behind an anonymous account.
It's usually hiding behind... Exactly. So I'm like, if I were walking down the street and some, drug addict who's off his meds, screamed at me or cussed at me or said something nasty about me, I wouldn't take that to heart. I'd be like, that's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame that someone is in this position and that they're suffering and that they're hurting, and I don't know what's gone in their life that's led them to this position, but it has nothing to do with me. And oftentimes the vitriol that you see on social media, honestly, it has nothing to do with you. I think, there are millions of people who log in every day and they're already angry. They're not happy with their life. They don't have a sense of meaning and purpose. Maybe they're isolated. Maybe they're just a nasty person, and they're going through and they're looking for something to attack. They're looking for the person to pile on. They're looking for, and sometimes you're just that person whose face pops up on their screen and they're like, you know what? Let me tell this cat chick what I think about her. And
they do. They sure do.
let me tell, but that doesn't say anything about you. You know what I mean? It's just like, you just happen to be the target of the day, or they don't like your profile photo, or they don't, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
You can't take it all so seriously.
I think I'm not terrible at it, but I think what you're talking about, scale, that's what I'm starting to deal with a little bit more. And then it's like, okay, when it's happening so much, it's starting to become a little bit like, okay, it's hard to get so much anger and be completely ignore it. I think it does start to get to you a little bit, or to me a little bit.
Let me give you some words of encouragement. It gets way, way, way worse.
Great. Very encouraging.
It doesn't scale linearly. It scales exponentially.
Awesome.
So if you 10x your followers, you're going to get like 50x that. But you also get 50x the love, or 100x or 500x the love, right? So people always ask me, man, how do you deal with the negativity? How do you just... And I'm like, man, how do I deal with the love? Like, that's actually can be more overwhelming and more challenging, especially to stay humble and to stay grounded and to not, get caught up in your own hype or whatever, when you've got hundreds of thousands, millions of people out there who are like, man, I love you, man. Like, I love what you're doing. Like, da-da-da-da-da. That's a challenge in itself. And I'll tell you, in the real world, it's all positive. In the real world, when I meet people who know me, whatever city, whatever country I'm in, if I meet someone who recognizes me, all love. It's love. It's love. It's like, it's amazing. It's overwhelming sometimes.
Do they admire your deadlift record as a British woman? Are they big
Yeah,
fans?
I inspired a lot of women with that. I
I'm
wanted to
glad.
smash that glass ceiling and show people, like whatever a man can do, women can do as well.
Yeah, no, I'm in awe. You really inspire me. Maybe one day I'll try as well.
Give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah. I think it's funny because you watch it on South Park. South Park was lampooning this stuff for ages before it
I th-
happened. You,
I think South Park got the idea from me.
oh,
South Park did that a
maybe you're
couple months. They did that a couple months after that viral tweet. And I
oh,
saw that and
really?
I was like, I think that someone on their staff, I was like, I'm so sure someone on their staff saw my tweet. Like, I'm so
We should
sure.
figure that out. We should figure that out. I think the world is just lampooning at this point. Like I think maybe um, South Park lampooned you, then and then the world lampooned South Park in that order. I think that's really what's going on here. They're right about everything. I mean, at this point, it's just you watch South Park and you predict the fate of the world, which I'm not so sure it's such a good thing. I think there's a lot of things where it was like, I don't think that's going to happen. That's absurd, and then it
Hey, and
happens. And I'm
that
very
hey,
like
that's
I
what
am
happens when you're
very
in clown world.
liberal. Like it's funny because I'm like, look, I'm very like, but I'm a liberal in like the traditional, the real
True
sense,
sense, yeah.
yeah, in the true sense, the classical liberal, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, but there is an yeah, as you call a clown world, and I guess we're living in it, which the fact that it strikes fear to have. I mean, my whole series is called Forbidden Conversations. I mean, there shouldn't be no forbidden conversations in the
Yeah.
first place. And my very first conversation, I was like, oh my God, I'm like so terrified of this topic, because that is the one topic I just never wanted to talk about, is anything to do with, it was about trans stuff. And I did an interview with Colin Wright. I'm not sure if you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's a friend of mine.
oh yeah, he's great, but like I was like terrified of that one, and that was the first one I did. So, but I realized like, well, I didn't get the only hate I got. It was actually from people who support Colin, because I'm probably not far critical enough of gender
Oh, okay,
ideology.
okay.
So
Got it.
yeah, so it's because the people who are very supportive of gender ideology probably just wouldn't bother watching the interview. So, and that's unfortunate, because everybody should be discussing, having civil conversations about this stuff, because otherwise we're never going to arrive at a place of sanity for any of it.
Yep.
And it doesn't serve anybody. And the question that I always say is like kind of dictates everything I do, and how I look at things, is like, what is useful, right? Anything we do, I think, is important to look from that perspective. What is the most useful thing you can do? And if it doesn't answer that question, I think, why are you saying it? Why are you doing this? So
Yeah. I think what's useful, and I would add to that what is true. What is
I
true,
like that. What is true?
and because I think something can be useful and sort of expedient, but it can promote a falsity.
Sure.
But I think that we have to look. There's a lot of room for subjective opinions and perspectives and experiences. That's always going to exist, but at a minimum, and this is the scariest thing about the whole clown world situation, and this is why the whole transgenderism topic actually is such a big one, despite being such a tiny percentage of the population. It's actually because it's actually about truth.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing, and I believe that you can be kind to people without murdering the truth in the process, right? So, and I wish more people would understand that, because oftentimes people are going along with things that they know to be false, or literally know are lies, but they're like, but as you said, I want to be a nice person, I want to be kind, I want to be, and I'm like, you're not being kind by lying is not kind. People do
Yeah.
this with the whole sort of fat acceptance, obesity thing as well, right? So I would never be harsh to someone, or be mean, or be cruel, or bully someone because they're overweight or because they're obese or anything. God forbid. No. Like I would never, attack someone or make fun of someone for that. In fact, I give massive props to, an overweight or obese person who's in the gym, working out, trying to fix it. However, I'm not going to tell them that it's healthy. I'm not going to tell them that, oh, actually, like, you look beautiful being 200 pounds overweight. Oh, that's wonderful. Like, you know who the problem is? The problem is society. It's all those bigots who are fat phobic and, no, like, I'm not going to lie to the individual, but I will be kind, right? I'm not going to tell the lie that transgender ideology wants everybody to adopt. But that doesn't mean that if someone identified as such, that I'd be an a-hole to them. I'll treat them and do with as much decency and kindness and civility as anyone else. Does that mean that I think a man can really be a woman? No. Does that mean I think a woman can really be a man? No. Do I understand the whole thing or why people, what it's like to have? No, I don't know. But
that's the thing. There are things that we don't know. There are things that we don't know, but is it equivalent? No. Yeah, and there are things that we do.
There's things that we do as well, right? So it's like,
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
to me, this whole thing is not all those conversations in that whole area. Like to me, it's not particularly complicated. But again, I think it comes from being able to separate the individual from the idea. So I can be very, very critical of the idea and say, look, I think this whole idea is nonsense. It's incoherent. It doesn't make sense. It's not logically consistent. It doesn't biologically make sense.
Yeah.
No, like that doesn't make sense. However, the person, the individual, I will fight for this individual's basic human rights and civil liberties in the way that I would for anyone else's, right? Like,
and not have people
whatever.
Call them names and attack them for no reason, not because of things that they've done, which is something that I see of a lot, and it does bother me because I think this kind of it's gotten kind of radical in that people have gotten sort of oppositional in ways and I get where that anger is coming from.
It's the reaction. It's the reactionary.
Absolutely.
It's the reactionary impulse,
but
right?
It doesn't make it okay. Yeah.
I agree with you. You. That's what happens. And again, this is where people need to learn to, just, I think, and maybe this is, I don't know what the world has been like for all the previous decades and centuries exactly, because I wasn't alive centuries ago, but I think that a lot of adults in our society right now are really emotionally jacked up and are actually quite immature in certain ways, like emotionally immature, because sometimes I see certain conversations or the way that people react and respond to certain things. And I'm just like, this is really childish, right? This is like watching some 5-year-olds on a playground, like yelling at each other and screaming and calling each other names or what. I'm like, why are grownups doing this? When I see a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old man or woman who cannot control their emotions, or who can't have a conversation without wanting to throw an insult at the person or wanting to like straw man them completely or like just blow, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like to me, it's kind of, I get like secondhand embarrassment from it. I'm like, you're a grown adult. Is it the comfort
that we've lived in, do you think?
I think that's a factor.
Relative comfort?
Yeah, I do think it's a factor. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe, the lack of hardship perhaps has kind of brought people's stoicism down in a way. I think also perhaps that unfortunately sometimes that type of behavior is rewarded. I think sometimes it's incentivized. So, there's this kind of social clout that you can get from being the person who's always angry and always outraged and always, just having these emotional, because people conflate it with passion. And I'm like, no, you can be very passionate about something, but also be emotionally under control. If I start acting like I don't know, whether I'm excited or I'm angry, if I just I'm running around like a hype jacked up 7-year-old, I think, people would be like, that's weird seeing a grown man, sort of behaving like that. But I think that where people are not kind of calling that out and saying, actually, that's not a good way for an adult to conduct themselves. And I think also the leadership has been very poor on this. When you're seeing politicians, when you're seeing prime ministers and presidents and congress people and governors bickering like children and calling each other names and insulting each other and trying to, Again, I'm like, this is so childish. Like
They're not
some
modeling.
of these people are in their 70s. They're in their
Yeah.
70s and they're acting. I'm like, come on, man, come on. And like full disclosure. I mean, I'm not even an American, but I'm Trump sympathetic. I would have voted for him if I were American. But that's one of my biggest criticisms of him. Right? Is
Mm.
that in terms of the example being set, and I get why he's like this because again, the media wasn't exactly reasonable with him. So I get he's
No.
fighting the fire with the fire, but I am sometimes like, bro, you're the president. Like you've got to, yes, your policies matter, but also how you conduct yourself and the why am I being a better role model than the president?
Yeah. No,
You see what
I think it's a pretty major criticism actually
Yeah,
of
it's a
him. Yeah.
criticism, but then and he's not the only one. I'm seeing some of these
No.
Democrats and these other Republicans, and they're just like it's very very childish, and it's just like let's just attack that person and do this and call this person that name and that and that, and I'm just like, and then I think that the truth is these people are role models to some degree, whether or not you think they should be, they are, and
Yeah.
people see that, and it lowers the bar for what people consider to be acceptable discourse, right? If the presidential candidates are calling each other names and insulting each other and whatever, then it kind of gives a green light that, oh, okay, that's acceptable political discourse. And then other people, kind of follow it. Whether they know they're doing that or not, I think that does happen.
Yeah, I know, I agree. And I think could do much better in modeling better conversations. I think starting from school with kids, I think with kids is really where it starts and critical thinking. And I think that's where I think we can start fixing some of these issues. And I'm just thinking around the dinner table with even my family. I think with me, like I was put down if I was emotional, like that was
Mm.
considered to be bad. So I think some of my more stoic approaches come from that, which is kind of funny because now I think about my family. They're like super emotional, hyper emotional when they argue about things. And I'm like the more stoic person. I don't know if
Yeah.
they might disagree. If hopefully they don't listen to this because then they'll criticize me for that. But I guess my final question for you, I guess, where do you see us 5 years from now? Do you see things getting better or worse? Are you? I'm asking
Ooh,
you to be a South Park episode.
yeah, sure. My honest answer is I think that it's up to us. Well, not just me and you, but I think it's up to the individuals within a society or within a country to determine where it goes. I don't think that whoever is in the White House or the Houses of Parliament or Congress or whatever, or the WEF, I don't think these are the people who really control the world. I think the power is always ultimately with the people, whether they know it or not. I think people decide what they're going to tolerate and how much of it they're going to tolerate. People ultimately determine what the value systems are and what is acceptable and what is unacceptable and where certain lines should be drawn. It's up to people, each as individuals to choose how they live their life, right? Your daily actions, your daily habits, what you choose to be. It's really up to us. I think that we have the power, and I think that I'm seeing some good signs of the pendulum starting to swing back to a more reasonable level. I think I'll be honest. I think people are tired of all the woke stuff. I think I'm noticing this type of exhaustion with it, where even the word, like even just saying the word, is kind of tiring, isn't it? Like when you say woke, it's like
Yes.
I almost wish I had a different word. Like I don't even like saying it. I think people are just kind of getting burned out by all of it, and you've had 3 years of all the COVID hysteria and this, and there was the Trump hysteria and the Brexit hysteria and this. Like it's just been this sort of assault on everyone's senses. I think people are just kind of exhausted, and are like, you know what, like just stop, like stop having. We don't want grown men twerking in front of kids, and like the even the response. The whole response to the Grammys thing, like which I didn't watch, but I think people are just like, you know what I mean? Like even the people who
Mm.
are, I look at it and I'm like, man, that is absolutely gross and blasphemous and not family friendly. Like, I don't like that. But I'm also just like, I couldn't even bother to comment on it publicly. I'm like, I don't even want to give that energy. Right. It's just kind of like red meat. It's like they knew what they're doing. Like they're just going to let's go try to piss off the conservatives and the Christians and let's do
I
this
didn't
whole
even
thing
watch
like
it.
okay, well, this artist did the whole thing almost like there was a satanic ritual dressing as the devil and all the red,
Oh, the
all that kind of
Balenciaga
stuff.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, along similar lines. And it's just like, at this point, it's just kind of like trite and kind of like boring and tasteless. And it's kind of very obvious what they're trying to do. And so I think people are like tired of being outraged. I think people are sort of like tired of the thing, and they're pushing certain ideas on children and stuff. So I think people are going to start drawing certain lines in the sand of like, look, like you can do what you want, but like believe what you believe, but like leave kids out of this stuff. Like don't bring it into the schools. Just like let's just be sane and be normal and have conversations. I'm seeing more and more people having these type of conversations and starting podcasts and YouTube channels and alternative. To me, those are all very positive signs. And at the same time, I think the people who are like pushing a lot of the massive division and polarization and getting everyone obsessed with race and obsessed with gender and obsessed with sex, like I think they themselves are losing its effectiveness, right? Like it's not as effective as it was 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and at the same time, they're losing attention. All these independent creators and independent voices, whether yourself or myself or the Rogans of the world and all these, Tim Pools, like the people doing all these different things in the different mediums, they're like siphoning energy away and money away from these sort of like giant corporations who just are hyper partisan and just trying to keep people at each other's throats and all that. So to me, I think that's all good. I think it's sort of decentralizing, and I think that people are just, like I said, people are exhausted. You can't keep people emotionally jacked up for 5+ years. At the moment, I think right now, people are just like, look, we just want the economy working. We want inflation to come. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if we want stuff to just work. We don't want to be, I don't know. Like, I think people are even sort of cottoning on, like, I don't talk about the Ukraine-Russia situation at all. Like, I'm not even trying to go there, but like, people are also just, you remember even a year ago, right? How much enthusiasm and how jacked up people were for the, and I think even now people are kind of like, we've sent them like $100 billion. Like maybe they should start asking some questions. Maybe like some of this, the whole thing's just kind of weird. People are questioning it. Just like the whole COVID narrative sort of broke down, and now people are like maybe that didn't really make sense or whatever. I'm seeing that happening with a lot of stuff. So I think that 5 years from now, if we choose to be, we'll be in a significantly better situation, just somewhere more moderate, more sane, more genuinely tolerant, better conversations, less polarization. I am optimistic on that front.
I hope so. I just hope that it doesn't go sort of the pendulum doesn't swing the other way too much either, because I am seeing a lot of sort of anger and radicalization on the other side of things too. So
go ahead.
No, that's kind of it. Like, because I am seeing that because people feel so betrayed.
Yes,
and I see where that anger is coming from. It's not unreasonable, but it is extreme, and so that kind of worries me a bit too. So the moderate side is what I would like to see, more reasonable, more kind of centered. But it kind of worries me what I'm seeing on the more radical fringes as well. I don't know if you see that.
I think we need to take any sort of like true radicals or the type of people who would advocate violence and that kind of stuff. Like we need to just totally take the wind out of those sails. The vast majority of people do not fit into those categories on any side of the political aisle. And I think that I'm seeing, the rise of the, I think the real split in many ways now is, people who want to be left alone versus people who refuse to leave each other alone. Right. Yes. I don't even think it's really like a right left thing or whatever. It's just like, look, just like just leave people alone and be sane and be normal. Just be reasonable. Don't be crazy. And like, that we can be cool, right? Like I think the extreme like 3% or 2% on those ends who are like pushing all this, pushing this. I'm like, maybe we just need to stop giving them energy. Maybe even stop talking about them. Just whatever. Just kind of ignore that. Ridicule it if need be. Just be like, yeah, whatever. Like you're silly. Like you're way over there. You're way over there. Let's let the adults talk. And I think that would be healthier because most people are still sane. That is the reality. Most people are sane.
I hope you're correct on that point. That's
They
that is
are.
the
They
hope.
are. If you doubt it, just go outside and be in a restaurant or at the airport or at a beach or any public area, whatever, and just like look at people and notice that like everyone is kind of getting on and people are not like fighting and screaming at each other and killing each other. That's when if you get too deep on Twitter, you can be like, oh my gosh, civil war is coming. But then you kind of look up and you're like, we're doing all right. We're doing all right.
Okay, that's very reassuring. I'm reassured. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
I needed that. Yeah, Twitter is not the world, is it?
No, it's not. No, very small
Thank
microcosm.
God.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. Well, thank
And
you
a
so
lot of
much
them are
for joining.
bots. A lot of them are
Oh,
bots. Don't forget that.
oh yeah. Well, according to the CIA. Just kidding. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for this chat.
You're welcome again.
It's